Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Gregory Verlinden. I'm responsible for analytics and AI within Cognizant, and I will be your host today. I would say welcome to our MLOps Ask the Expert event, and it's all about our path to AI success. Let's be honest. I think if we currently look. If we currently look, I think about artificial intelligence in whatever digital transformation we're doing, whether it's in society, whether it's in business, whether it's in our personal life, it is being considered as a priority. I think AI is all over the place, and we're even having more and more dependencies on AI, which means that it gives us a value perspective. Equally, also, it brings some risk with it that we need to control and to manage. I think a lot of companies nowadays, there is a big balance between underusing, a debate around underusing and overusing AI. We don't want to underuse it because we don't want to miss the opportunity to differentiate and to be successful in the context of our business. Equally, we also don't want to overuse it because if AI is creating no value, then it does not really make sense. And there you see we have the two disciplines, the discipline around AI value engineering, which we will not discuss today, but the second element is around MLOps, which is becoming increasingly more important. I don't know if you're aware, but the European Commission has just launched their first set of rules to manage the opportunity, but also the threats of AI. And I think this is a very important momentum. And so for that reason, I think that also our discussion topic around MLOps today is very relevant. Yeah. We will have it divided into three sections. Yeah, we will have a panel discussion around what are the imperatives of MLOps. Then we will have indeed a customer success story that will then result into a debate, and then we will have a focus around the MLOps for personas. Now, I'm just a moderator. Yeah, let's be modest. I'm surrounded by two really great things. I don't know if you're aware, but Cognizant acquired Inawisdom last year. Yeah, I think by the combined forces of Cognizant and Inawisdom, we can clearly state that we are thought leaders in AI. And you can read some of the analyst reports around that. We are getting more and more recognized into that domain. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is about Ask the Expert. Yeah, and I'm really very delighted to have really two experts with me. And first, I want to introduce Phil. Already 20 years in the industry, 15 years being very active in gaming and media startups. Phil has a track record on building high-performance systems, where indeed he also has the luckiness to build really MLOps models at scale. Yeah, where you see even going to 1,000 interferences per minute, which also means that when you do MLOps at scale in a quite intensive way, yeah, again, all about monitoring and making sure that you're doing the right stuff is quite very important. Now, I'm also very honored. This Phil is also for more than 6 years already also a very recognized leader around MLOps within the AWS world. Yeah, he has many certifications in MLOps, equally also in DevOps. But he is one of the even AWS APN ambassadors. So he is a thought leader who writes blogs, but also who does really contributions to the open source world. So again, Phil, thank you and a big welcome. And then next to that, we also have Kartik. Kartik also being 17 years into the business, really focusing on AI architecture and leading also the engineering practice, has also been involved in many implementations of machine learning across industry, life sciences, banking, and media clients. And even recently, he has been involved in a very, I would say, leading implementation of the use of machine learning in the context of fraud within one of the bigger banks. So again, with these two gentlemen, I'm sure that they will absolutely, hopefully, inspire you. Just before we go into protocol, yeah, or we start the discussion, a small protocol. If you want to ask a question, and please, I want to motivate, ask as much as possible questions. Please put your question into the chat, and I will pick it up. You also will see we will do 3 polls. during the event. Yeah, we also will share back the results with you afterwards. So if we could now launch the first poll, then we will after that pop up and start with the discussion around MLOps. So this is just an open question. At what stage is your MLOps adoption? Are you the top-notch expert, or you are in the beginning? If you can submit your answer, this would be really great. And then we will start with the first MLOps point of view. Okay. I hope we are getting somewhere. Okay, so let's start with our MLOps point of view. Hey Phil, I want to ask you a question. What is MLOps all about, and for who is it?
Yeah, morning Gregory, morning everybody. Hope you're having a good day. So MLOps is about the people, the process and the technologies around productionizing machine learning models. It allows you to scale from maybe one initial use case of machine learning to potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of different use cases within your business, pulling across many models from vast data sets. And it's also about supporting multiple teams working independently with each other at producing those models, and then providing a governance framework and some consistently using tools and automation to make that as easy as possible.
Great. Well, people, processes, technologies. I think that I have been hearing this a lot in the data and the analytics analytics world. So Karthik, can you explain a little bit, because I'm a little bit confused. You have MLOps, but we have equally DevOps. We're talking about data ops. We're talking about model ops. Can you clarify a little bit for us what is the difference?
Oh, thank you, Gregory. To make it as simple as possible. So DevOps is all about enabling collaboration between application development teams and IT operations, with the intent of maximizing agility and speed when it comes to application world. While that is said, there are three key pillars that DevOps is built on. It's collaboration, automation, and bringing in better transparency into what's happening in the operations as well as in the development world. Applying the same principles to the world of data and analytics is data ops, where the roles are slightly different. As you know, in any data and analytics project, it is going to be a lot of business involvement in addition to IT and developers getting involved. So that is data ops, and applying similar concepts of automation, collaboration, and transparency to the world of machine learning. Having a few additional roles that gets covered as MLOps. But I would say primarily the core principles and the pillars are the same. The user personas and the type of IT business involvement changes.
Thank you for that clarification, Patrick. And Phil, again, a question to you. When do I start doing something with MLOps? And when do I need to take it seriously? And when does it make sense to start with it?
So in my experience, you should actually probably start with it at the start of kind of your ML projects, but work very incrementally and improve your skills and your process and your tooling as you progress. So start small, because if you could try and go for some sort of utopia, it's a bit of a myth. And like it's in DevOps, you know, it will take incremental and time to make sure that your processes and technology mature and your use of them matures. So I'd say get started with it, and then incrementally improve from really your first few models, and then really concentrate on that culture and collaboration aspect of it. You want to really help the data scientists be creative and get their models live, but you want to provide the controls around it to make it happen. So and then you can use the tools and the processes to improve that. So that would be my advice. You start small and then start improving it as you progress and you do more and more use cases.
Thank you. when we start using MLOps, I've got a question for you. Like you mentioned, Phil, we have the involvement of data scientists. Do we start talking a new type of personas in our MLOps typical processes, technology, gameplay?
Okay. If you see in any large MLOps implementation, I've come across 5 types of user profiles or personas. So you're going to have a data scientist who will be in charge of building models, getting them deployed. There will be business stakeholders or business SMEs who will be domain experts advising data scientists as and when required, giving them business use cases. There would also be data engineers who will help in getting data onboarded, doing quality checks on data, getting data made available for inferences once they are moved into production, once models are deployed. There is one interesting role that I see emerging. Again, this is happening in some of the larger organizations which are doing cutting edge AI ML experiments as well as production deployments. They call it as research scientists, who are types of data scientists who are actually fundamentally data scientists who are involved in doing a lot of R&D related work in terms of in terms of trying out newer methodologies of solving AI/ML use cases and trying to get them sort of whitelisted, if I can say, in terms of adaptability into the organization. So these are primarily the key roles that gets involved when it comes to MLOps.
Okay, thank you. Phil, another question is that, do you have any guidance on what is the next generation ML architecture? And the reason why I'm asking that, I'm sometimes struggling. Yeah? Should I now go to implement MLOps? Do I need to go the full open source way, or do I need to buy some softwares which are out of the box available? Can you give a little bit of your point of view on this?
Yeah, so I suppose my point of view is you should invest in the right technologies to support those personas or the layers that you're talking about. So you want to invest in the right infrastructure and then the right data tooling beneath that to allow your data engineers to do their work, and then build it up through the layers so you can allow your data scientists to easily use the latest frameworks and technologies from the data science world, and then concentrate around the governance and the automation. Most cloud providers have a very strong provision in this area now, so definitely look at them and also look at some of the commercial aspects. You can go open source, but what you have to remember is that you have to run that and be specialists in that. So you need to think about the kind of the total cost of ownership and that kind of aspect. So there is a lot of tools out there, but I'd concentrate on getting the right engineers and giving them the concentrate on the layers and working up the layers and make sure you get the tooling in the layers that are the best for for your engineers and your scientists.
Okay, really great. So before we go and look to the first customer case that Phil will present, a last question for you, Karthik. What is really the holy grail of MLOps?
Okay. The holy grail of MLOps, I would say, is having machine learning pipelines that are real time, that are online, which again in most cases would be predictive engines that are not only deploy forward but which gets continuously updated over time based on the data points that it encounters, without having to go through the typical code to deploy approach. That said, the barriers towards getting to this point is quite again there are numerous barriers towards, right from the operationalizing as well as standardizing. So that's where MLOps becomes very important. If we get it right the first time and if we get it right, then we are essentially moving the organization into a zero ops culture, wherein most of the tasks around measuring threshold, models retained, etc., can be automated. So I would say that's the holy grail when it comes to MLOps.
Thank you, Karthik. So Phil, it's over to you now. Can you give us a little bit of touch and a feel on what this does mean in real life for a customer around MLOps?
Absolutely. Let me. Hopefully, you can all now see my presentation. Yeah. So we'd like to share with you one of the customers that clients we have been working with at Inawisdom for a while now, and that is, one second, my screen. So that is Aramex. Aramex is a logistics company located in the Middle East, like FedEx, that kind of thing. They're doing both e-commerce and international transport shipments around the world. We've worked with them on a number of use cases. So currently, they have hundreds of models deployed, and they have 10 to 20 use cases. The one I wanted to use case I wanted to particularly talk about is they have a use case where we're using a mixture of NLP and geospatial features to understand addresses and where their locations are on longer latitudes in the world. And why this is a very strong use of MLOps and that principle is because we're getting, these models have to be very up to date on the latest aspects of the data. And there's two aspects of the data that can change. One is more deliveries can come in, and that gives us every minute more examples and better examples of addresses to use to get people's delivery correct. And the second thing is they are always optimizing their routes and which addresses are served by which routes. So that kind of poses us two kind of MLOps kind of things. Is one, as those incrementally addresses come in, we want to keep updating these models. So we want a continuous process every week that is fully automated, that goes through and adds new example data and builds on the existing data, and we train the models. And then every month, every fortnight, when the routes are realigned and re-optimized, then we'll retrain all the models from scratch. And we're training hundreds of models because we need one per city. So we've built out quite a comprehensive pipeline to pull that data in, to train those models and then deploy them. And we have to deploy, this is a highly real-time system, so it's getting thousands of predictions a minute. So it's something where we have to deploy kind of in DevOps land, a rolling update. So we can't take an outage, we have to do it in the background. So we have to deploy the new models, we have to verify that they're running successfully, and then we have to migrate out the old models and they become the primary models. So that requires a lot of expertise and a lot of aspects. And part of that also is that some of these use cases with them have multiple models. So it's not just one model per use case. There was either hundreds or many different kind of legs to the journey, the transportation journey. So we have to have different processes coming along and getting involved in the process and bringing this data in. And how we do that and how we understand the data and when to retrain and understand it is we have a thing that's called, what we like to call the 360 view of the model's operation, and that gives us the best insight of what's going on with that model. The most important insight is the effect it's having on the business, the value it's driving through the business. If we can ascertain the core KPI, the core result that's happening, we can monitor that for, is it having the impact? And that's quite important that we want, and also if it's degrading and seeing something happen in the real world that's changed things. And we've all been in the COVID-19 pandemic, so fundamentally things have changed with people's data, people's human behaviors change. So if you think about it in Aramex's sense, they would have been doing lots of deliveries maybe at people's workplace in office hours. Now suddenly people are working from home. That's had a massive kind of change in their data. So we have to monitor that top KPI to make sure that things are being produced correctly, the results are produced correctly. And then we've got more systematic and more detailed monitoring behind that. So the next thing to think about is the performance of the ML side of the model. So we're looking at things there like accuracy and F1 score, and to make sure that you're still within the normal boundaries, especially when we retrain those models. For example, in AMX, when we deploy the new models every week, we have to make sure that they're still within the same kind of percentage accuracy that they were before. If they're not, then we know something's kind of wrong in the process, and we have to go into the process and have a look and readdress it. And so that's quite important to kind of model and monitor. And then there's the more I'd say low-level traditional system kind of monitoring is keeping an eye on things like response times and what's adding to latency, and making sure that you optimize that for real time if you've got something that is needs to be responded in 200 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds or less. And also looking at things like the solution performance, so CPU, GPU, disk usage, IO, that kind of thing. And then kind of from my point of view, the next the thing that completes that is the cost view of the model, and we can see it there. So most people, when we talk about MLOps, everybody kind of, and ML, everybody is like really excited about the training and how long that takes, how many hours, and people can get quite obsessive about that. But relatively, normally that's quite a small upfront or maybe incremental process. It doesn't happen that often. The more likely thing is the cost of running that model day in, day out, do those inferences either real time or batch, and thinking about how to optimize that and how you make best use of your hardware in that aim. So make sure that you are looking after your models from all those points of view, so that you know it's driving you value and you know you've got your costs under control. So that would be my strongest kind of view on how to do these things. And then, as mentioned a bit later, we'll talk about personas. You have to invest. The other thing to make sure, and the thing with AMX, is make sure we invest in those layers, and we have talked about that a few minutes ago. It's about making sure you have the right infrastructure in place, so the right security controls on your network, being able to get into on-prem networks and hybrid networks, and invest in that, and make sure you have security controls around who can access these things. And then moving up to the data layer, you want to make sure that you've got that under control. So you know you've got your ingestion sorted, you know your ETL process, you understand how your data progresses through the pipeline, and that you've got lineage back from being able to produce training data and exploration data for data scientists back through the process. So invest in that way. And then I suppose the most important thing is start to think about multi-environment aspects of this. So once you've got critical systems and you're evolving a model, what you don't want to do is be experimenting directly in production all the time. You want some control around it. So we normally go for a multi-environment process that allows experiments to happen, and then things get promoted through using DevOps techniques along the pipeline and into production when you're ready. And that also allows for that kind of automated process. Then we put governance and control around making sure that we understand when those processes are occurring, what models were trained when, and what data set, and that kind of thing. And we'll talk a bit more about that in due course. So it's about getting those pipelines and data governance into the process. And then lastly, we kind of, in the AMX use case, we kind of think about this as, and I mentioned this earlier, you've got to kind of think about delivering an MVP first to get through the first stage of your deployment, to make sure you get that value out there. Don't try and invest too much upfront in this process. And we normally do this incrementally, and in Wisdom we have like an 8-week philosophy of we'll get the first example of a model embedded live and productionized for you in 8 weeks. That we'll look at how it's embedded, we'll look at the automation, we'll look at how it's monitored, and that's kind of our philosophy. Right, so that's the AMX use case and a bit more about how we do things. I am going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to go back to the panel mode, and we're going to go for our next, we're kind of going to do a poll. This one's a bit more of a quiz to see you all pay attention. The question we're going to ask is this one, is how many large enterprises run numerous AI models, but run numerous AI models, what percentage actually make it into production? The options are 60, 70, 30, and 10% of models that actually make it to production. So please, can you all take a guess, or you may know the answer.
Great. So thank you already, Phil, for your inspiring explanation around Aramex. And I have some questions that I would like to ask you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So Phil, can you comment on the poll result?
Sorry, can you say that again, please, Gregory?
Can you, Paul, what was the right answer?
The poll is just finished. Most people think it's either 30% or 10%. The correct answer was 10% of models make it actually into production.
Okay, good. Well, so good news is that for all of us there is still a lot of work to do. So, Kartik, a question. How do you scale your effort to industrialize, scale the use of ML in your business? Because this is not only an IT/data play, a business is quite important. Can you give a little bit of your thought leadership on this? Kartik, you're on mute.
I hope you're able to hear me. When it comes to scaling out ML, unlike the application world, when it comes to machine learning I see as a discipline that involves 3 types of skills. One is you need people who are data scientists, who understand how to apply algorithms and other data science principles on data. Second is IT operations, who would be involved in getting models deployed, etc. In addition to these 2 disciplines, there is a lot more involvement needed from the business side as well, because for most of the business, for most of the use cases that I have been involved in, these are all done for the first time, and that involves a lot of business involvement. So it is very important to have business stakeholders onboarded at the start of these initiatives in order to see success. So if you ask me what would be the type of involvement needed from a business user, during the initial model conceptualization as well as during the model build phase, I would say if not a full-time involvement, at least it's going to be heavily involved. It's going to be a heavy involvement from the business side. And once models are productionized, in order to ensure that models are performing well, and then until a point where the larger set of users feel confident about the about the outcomes that the models give, there will be a lot of business involvement needed. So when we plan for these kind of projects, it's very wise to plan for a lot of business involvement, right from day one.
Okay. So again, what I understand is key, a business is a key involvement that is really needed. And as you said, models needs to drive and deliver a value result. I have a question for you, Phil. Is that how much is it of a burden to retrain your models? And do you quite often need to do that? Is it very hard to do? Can you give a little bit your experience on this?
Yeah, so I think firstly you start at why you want to retrain your models. So there's generally kind of 4 areas that you kind of want to think about. One is, as I mentioned earlier, you've seen that your accuracy is dropped, or one of your metrics has dropped, and you've detected that, so you want to kick off the process. The other one is you may be monitoring the data for a significant change in the data set. So like I mentioned in the Aramex case, that when they change some of their route mapping, it effectively makes some of the existing models pretty redundant. So you have to know that the business context has kind of changed, the data's changed. Then for me, the third one is like an event-based, and normally that's time. So you may want to just have a standard process of every quarter that you retrain your model, that kind of thing, in place. Or maybe the data scientists have a new algorithm, or they want to change something, and you have to bring that change in the process. What I would say is try to automate that process as much as possible. If you don't do that, make sure that you have it well documented and more of a run book style event, so that people can easily follow it. It's very easy to come back in a year's time and you've forgotten lots of how it was built, that kind of thing. So make sure that you have all of that clearly documented, if not automated.
Okay. And meanwhile, the next question is popping up, Kartik, for you, is that as in the intro I was mentioning that you have been working on machine learning in the context of fraud, and so the question has been imposed: how difficult or how challenging has been retraining of fraud machine learning models? Any reaction?
I wouldn't honestly differentiate fraud versus any other use case when it comes to retraining challenges, as well as for that matter any model when it initially goes live. I've seen users always looking at it with a bit of skepticism. So until they get confident that the models are guiding them the right way, this is something that you will normally see. And this is no different for fraud. Some of the finer aspects when it comes to fraud models is especially when you build these models, due to a lot of federal government involvement, as well as a lot of governmental norms and complaints around this, you will have to take care of a few non-traditional things, if I can say that. I'll just give you an example. When I was involved in building this model, there was due to federal government norms, there was a need to be able to go back point in time and then have an ability to play back inferences over time. So up to 6 months, any point in time, the predictions that these models gave in terms of classifying transactions that were fraudulent versus genuine transactions. We had to have systems in place so that up to 6 months, the organization is able to go back point in time and then actually simulate inferences, which you will not find in many other use cases. So there will be sort of some special requirements such as these, which are again very use case specific. So when we design MLOps systems, it's very important to understand not only it's not just deploying models, getting them to work at scale, but when we set up systems, it is also important to take care of these finer aspects, which sometimes could be very use case specific. So I would say the biggest learning that I had when I was part of this implementation was the need to look into finer details about other larger ramifications that these models can create outside just doing what they are supposed to do and then giving good responses. So that was interesting.
Thank you, Kartik. And meanwhile, a nice question is popping up, Phil. I think it's for you, referring back to your Aramex case and Aramex experience. What's the most overlooked aspect when it comes to operating a model? What do we forget too often, which is important?
Yes, I think most of us tend to get carried away in the experimental phase, the training phase, that the exciting new thing to prove that value, and that is great, and that's obviously leads to great things. But it's some of that longer aspect in terms of the cost of running those models can be quite expensive day to day. So you need to think about making sure that you have control over the purse strings and that kind of thing. And also, it's also, if it does require training quite often and you haven't put the automation in the process, think about the human aspect of that. It's probably very easy to say this person can retrain it once a month, once a week, whatever, but free them up, make sure they're delivering the next value thing, and think about putting automation to kind of it. So it's the cost of maintenance and making sure that you use tools to make sure that is as low as possible, really.
Phil, I will ask you a last question, and meanwhile, Kartik, if you maybe can prepare yourself to showcase the persona story and the KPIs. I have a little bit of a naughty question, Phil, is that are data scientists really good good people to build very performant models. Can I take the assumption that when a data scientist build a model, that it always will work in a very performant way?
That is a quite a naughty question. Thank you. So data scientists are great. They're really experimental. We love them, and they're good. But I would say, in the most part, not. They come from a very academic background, a very experimental background, and it's about. And the key kind of the persona or person to put next to them is that ML engineer, someone who understands their world, but can take kind of normal engineering and a development background and a DevOps background and make it happen for them, and make sure that that is collaborative and they work together hand in hand, and that really does help. You don't want to have a siloed approach. You want one team working together. So that's what I would say, is make sure that you invest in giving the data scientists the support they need and the freedom they need, and invest in some of the wider personas.
But so what I will remember is that at the end they need a team, and it's a team collaboration effort to make sure that the model is creating the value, but is also doing it in at scale in a performance.
Yeah, they may be the rock star, but they still need the band.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, good. Karthik, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience around MLOps for personas?
Sure. When it comes to any MLOps projects, I see 5 types of user roles to be very important, who will have a major part to play in terms of getting the organization towards the path of success. So you will have data scientists, you will have MLOps engineers, there would be cloud administrators who will be involved, there would be business users as well as data engineers. And each of these roles will have a different set of activities that they perform, plus their motivation towards getting involved in an MLOps would be from a different perspective. If you take data scientists, their primary objective is to ensure that models, once they are deployed, they perform well, they are accurate, they are giving you the right predictions. So that because that's their baby, they created these models, they want to make sure these are being adopted well. Similarly, MLOps engineers would be involved in ensuring that the models are up and running all the time, or it meets all the non-functional requirements, being up, being available, and then working in an automated way, etc. Cloud admins would come from a cost perspective and an infrastructure perspective in ensuring that the overall cost aspects of the models, inference cost is all within budget, as well as from infrastructure and a security aspect, things are going well. Business users would love to have an overall picture of getting a picture of, show me all the AI models. I've invested X dollars in the last 3 years rolling out 5 different AI models for different use cases. How are they performing? How is the overall adoption, and things like that. And data engineers would be equally interested as data scientists in terms of ensuring the models are working well. So they would be specifically looking for things such as data drifts and the overall model's health. So when all these 5 different personas come together, it is wise to have metrics organized in a way which makes it very easy for them to look at the ones that they are interested in, towards the next course of action. For example, if the models, if there is too much of data drifts, then data engineer is alerted, and then he gets involved in terms of bringing in the necessary corrections. So would be the role of a data scientist. And then a business user will have to be informed about the overall value that his investment has created over time. It could be a business user. When I say business user, we are not referring to just people from the marketing team and HR and other functions. We are also talking about the executive management, people at the CAO, CIO levels who make calls about investing in AI versus other ways of getting things done, right? So a good way to set up a platform for all these users is to have a dashboard set up where relevant metrics that each of these personas would be interested in is made available in a way where it is easy to access. And I've always seen that mature organizations work towards democratizing all the AI ML products over time. So any organization, if it's going to be a large enterprise, over a course of 3 to 5 years, they would end up building anywhere between 30 to 50 models. I'm just taking the example of a few banks as well as a few pharmacy biotech companies that I've been involved in. Most of them have anywhere between 30 to 50 models that they build organically over time. Some of these would be organically built, and on top of that, they would also be tapping into a few AI services that are available out of the box in most of the hyperscalers, be it AWS or be it others. So it is always very important to get, while model building and deployment is important, it is equally important to have an ecosystem set up which makes it easy to manage these models, which is again a very important aspect of MLOps. So I just want to show you how this is done with a quick demo. And this is how this is just one way of doing this, wherein you build a web application and then get all the machine learning AI models that you build over time exposed. So a user, before he or she begins, if it's going to be a data scientist, or I'm just calling it an MLOps specialist, it could be a data scientist, or it could be a business user. They are able to come into this portal. They are able to search for the types of models they want. For example, if I'm just typing for fraud, I'm able to go and then query for what I'm looking for against a model registry. A model registry is a place where all the models organizationally gets recorded, along with a lot of metadata information about models. And then he or she is and then he gets to see the list of all models related to my search criteria. I'm able to see like a few types of fraud related models built. I'm also able to see a one-liner on what these models are trying to do, and then an overall adoption score. For example, these models have 4 adoptions. They've probably been and then and then the user is also able to go and then see some additional information about the models. What does this model do? And some other details about what is the accuracy details of these models, what is the type of infrastructure that this model is running on, as well as the type of data, which is very important, that was used to build these models, also being supplied to these models on an ongoing basis. Plus other behavioral aspects, such as what's the feedback from users who have used these models over time, that also gets recorded. So this would give a very easy way to understand about different models that are published over time, and then this is very similar to the marketplace concept, where all AI ML assets gets published, and then it is made easy for users to access and then adopt. Plus other aspects related to what were the other recently published models, what are the models that are most frequently accessed, then the top rated models based on adoption, as well as most used models based on the adoption and accuracy. So setting up something like this, I'm just calling this as a marketplace, would make it very easy to bring in better adoption within an organization. So this would be typically what a business user or a data scientist would do in terms of getting to know what are the other models that are existing in the organization. If you take what would be of interest to an MLOps engineer, he might be involved in terms of getting insights into. He would primarily do 2 things. One is publish new models, as well as get to know about metrics related to models that are already published, right? So for publishing models, we believe having an approach which is again completely UI driven, instead of having to go and make updates to YAML files and XML files in terms of getting models published is very important. This would make it very easy for organizations to treat AI projects like any other projects, wherein from an ops perspective, it makes it very easy to deploy models. Again, irrespective of the underlying modalities about what is the platform being used, what type of model it is, etc. So this approach would make it very easy, where the user selects what is a platform you want to publish. You want to publish it on AWS, or is it going to be an on-prem setup, or something else? It could be Azure or GCP as well. Then the different model parameters gets picked up here. then the type of infrastructure that needs to be put in forth towards supporting these deployments. Is it medium, small, extra large type of instance? Then the type of deployment that this model should be set up for, real time versus batch. Similarly, what would be the schedule, daily, weekly, monthly? Then you pick up the exact time of when you want to schedule it. Then any other infrastructural options. For example, there could be companies who run models even in AWS. There are different ways in which models can be deployed, right? You might want to deploy it on SageMaker, or you might want to deploy it as a container service. That gets decided here. And you finally go and submit. Upon submission, the activity of standing up infrastructure, etc., happens behind the scenes. So for an MLOps engineer, we are making it very easy for him or her to get models deployed, without having to understand the modalities of how these models are built. So there is a lot of standardization that needs to be done in order to get to this point. So once models are deployed, based on the user personas, you also have all the relevant metrics that would be applicable to users organized in the form of a dashboard. So when you look at the model registry, this view would give you, all the models that are published. For example, these are a couple of models that are published in this environment. Plus, you will be able to see who's the owner of these models, who owns these models, what BU is it applicable to, when was it published, last refresh time, what is the total cost of running these models, right time it was published. Plus some aspects about model explainability. So this chart gives you a sense of what are all the significant contributors to the output of each of these models. If you take this customer churn model, from this graph, it looks like the time that the user has spent with the service, as well as the type of plan that he or she has got, are significant contributors compared to the duration of the accounts, or the type or the time when he or she makes calls. So this way, bringing in explainability into models is first of all, going to bring in better transparency in terms of letting people understand what are all the different significant and less significant contributors to the model's outcome. And in addition to that, it also brings in a better sense of transparency, as well as overall understanding of what is happening behind the scenes when it comes to models. So this is again gaining a lot of prominence. There are different tools and products that are getting launched towards bringing in better explainability into models. Similarly, a summary view of the would give details about it would give you metrics about the total cost of deploying these models. What is the CPU utilization, memory utilization? These are all metrics that would be relevant for an IT engineer or a cloud engineer.
Hey, well, sorry to interrupt, because I think we still want to have also a little bit of a discussion. So I think a lot of metrics in place, and what I understand for different personas, a unique set of reports that can be used. It's like a little bit driving. You're sitting in your car and you look to your dashboard and you only want to see what is relevant to that.
Absolutely.
Now, I think we want to pose a first poll question before we go into a little bit of debate.
Sure. So we just wanted to get your perspective on this. We know that MLOps is important, and then it ensures AI success. But according to you, can you take a guess on this? What percentage of large enterprises have mature MLOps capability? There are some options given here, but we would like to hear your point of view on what you think it is.
Meanwhile, while everybody is putting his input, Phil, I have already a first question for you, which is a very interesting one, which is popping up here. Is that I think we all know about the concept of model drift, and I want to hear a little bit out on you. Is model drift is really the ownership of one persona, or multiple personas involved in managing the overall concept of model drift?
I would say it's a beautiful question. I would say there are three types of users who are directly responsible for this. One is business users, of course, because they decide what are the significant that are likely going to be responsible for an outcome. All the weightages that gets into model building, etc., is decided based on their input. They are definitely involved there. The second is the actual data engineers who are actually constructing the data pipes, getting data pulled in from different sources, etc. The third is also a data scientist. One might argue, how is a data scientist involved when it comes to data drifts? But in my opinion, while data engineers and business SMEs have an influencing role, the actual weightage of if you take a typical model build, right? As a process, there would be multiple versions of models that get built with different weightages for different data points, and then finally it's the data scientist who decides one version or the other based on what he or she feels gives the best results. So that way there is also a significant role that a data scientist plays. So I would say it's a combination always. So three of these roles are definitely responsible when it comes to data drift, and all of them should align together and act together to get issues solved.
Okay, good. Well, before I want to ask Phil a question, can you just give a little bit the result on the poll question?
I'm just overwhelmed by the number of right answers. It's right. So 6% is right. Again, we have got some research papers supporting this. If you are interested, you can reach out to me. I can give you details about this. Okay. But 6%.
Hi Phil, can you comment on model drift personas? Do you agree with what Karthik has been telling, or do you have a little bit of a different point of view on the personas in place?
Yeah, I think when it comes to model drift, it comes down to, I suppose, definition. If it's drift due to accuracy and F1 score, it's going to be the data science that predominantly cares about that, because they will know what it means to the model, and they need to kind of own that. And then I think also, like I said, the business user is the next important one, knowing, because that's probably led to some sort of business impact. They probably know that maybe the confidence or the accuracy has dropped. So they are the two correct ones. And then I suppose it's who responds to that mostly. The person who was most likely to respond to it would be the ML engineer, and they should action maybe every training process or something like that to make sure that that model is updated and brought back to the accuracy that needs to be brought back to.
Phil, I have also another question to you. As we're mentioning, as Karthik talking about different personas that are getting into play, then I'm saying, oh my God, and more people, more complexity. Where do I need to put these people? Are they sitting in IT? Are they sitting in data? Are they sitting in the business? Can you give a little bit about your perspective, how you have seen how these teams are getting organized, and where do they belong to? Are they sitting in IT? Are they sitting in business? Can you give your thoughts on this, please?
So I think generally from the kind of, with the exception maybe of the business user owner, most of them should sit more or less in its own squad really, and that you kind of work on a particular problem definition as a whole unit in terms of getting the data in, understanding the data, building the initial models, refining it, automating, deploying it. So I see it more as a squad model where across multiple aspects of the business. And in terms of how that engages with the business, I see that through that business owner, that business value that they're driving with maybe the data scientists, some of the roadmap for that model, in terms of setting KPIs and things, and agreeing kind of vision for where they want to take it, and working collaboratively, getting a kind of an iterative roadmap of where to take that model over a long period of time, from its MVP to iteration Z, for example.
Yeah, so what I understand, and I think you also mentioned it already in the beginning, don't go for the big stack, don't go for the big bang, go in small steps, and by doing that, start learning how to walk, and once you know how to walk, you start running. For the sake of time, Kartik, a last question for you. I think when we talk about data migration, data engineering, we've developed a lot of tools to facilitate migrations. Yeah? If we now look to machine learning, how can we make code development much more easier? Yeah. Any thoughts about how we can make it much more easier to build and adopt AI models in our ecosystem?
So there are 4 areas when it comes to machine learning lifecycle where I see scope for automation or scope for doing things faster in a more organized way. One is AI, what I call as AI value identification, which is a process of identifying what would be the things such as, do I have the right use cases identified where AI/ML can be applied? Do I have from a data standpoint, do I have all the data points needed to be successful with this specific use case? Things like this can be sort of standardized, because this is going to be a repeatable process that happens with every use case. So this is one. Second is when it comes to infrastructure stand-up, there are tools such as RAM that comes from Inawisdom, which makes it very easy for you to stand up infrastructure, with the clicks of buttons. Most of the cloud formation templates with a nice UI is what you get with RAMP. So that's one. That's place number or area number 2. Third is the actual model build. If you see, most of the AI/ML use cases today will be centered around, probably it's about 15 different types of modeling approaches that are being adopted, right? It's going to be XGBoost, or it's going to be some of the most commonly used classification, regression types of models. So I would always recommend first see if the problem that you're trying to solve is already available as a pre-engineered service available, with AWS or for that matter any other cloud service provider. See if you can tap into any of the existing services. If not, try to build models from scratch. Don't most of the times we try to build models and then realize that there is already a pre-engineered service. So try to make use of that. The fourth.
Thank you for the discussion, and we're almost ending ending the end. What I have certainly experienced in listening to you is that there is no one fits all. There are different opinions about how to pick this up, how to do it. I hear here, don't go for the big bang, go into the baby stacks. I'm also saying, hey, and depending on the persona, you need to have a different dashboard to look to. Any last thoughts? So I think, Phil, you have 1 minute to make your final pitch or your final thought to share to the audience, and then you, Kartik. So Phil, in 1 minute, what are the final thoughts that you want to bring to the audience?
Yeah, so I always think about this as the 4 C's. Okay, you want to work on, make sure that you have the culture and the collaboration nailed. That's the most important of anything. You can have the best models, you can have the best engineers, but you don't have the collaboration and the culture in place to allow that to execute well, then you're not going to get anywhere, basically. And then it's the third one is create. You want to allow the data scientists to create. They're there to, that's what they are there to do. They're there to experiment, there to see the next value, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you're giving them that opportunity. So it's not about locking them down and controlling them too much. It is about allowing them to create. But you do want to put, and the final one is a bit of control around how it goes from the cutting board that is data science and notebooks, etc., all the way into live critical production systems, and that's where you need to put a little bit more control and rigor over time when time progresses.
Okay, great, Phil. Kartik, your final comments?
Absolutely. I just want to leave 3 points. One is for you to be successful with AI, these are probably 3 things that you should have in mind. One is have your data house in place, set it up for success, ensure that all data points that you require are available. Second is get business SMEs involved right from day one. They are often overlooked upon. AI/ML is not a technology journey. It's more of it's equally important to get business teams involved. Third is look at MLOps at the start of any AI initiative. It is generally an afterthought, which sometimes delays things, makes things could have been done much easier if it is thought of at at the start. So these are just the 3 things I would leave.
Again, a big thank you, Karthik and Phil, and also a big thank you to the audience. Also a big thank you to the audience of asking many questions. As you see, I think we're quite fascinated. Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more relevant. I think we have the expertise. We've done it in multiple industries and multiple accounts. So more than happy to collaborate, to co-create, and to share with you. For that reason, I think we offer you as being attending this call, I think 2 type of workshops that we want to offer you as a kind of starting point to initiate the discussion. It's all about the first workshop concept is to get started. I'm really coming back to the AI value engineering. Which use case do I prioritize? Which use case can I make sense? On the other side, once you have done your use case MVP build, a second type of workshop can be how do I now bring it into production? Because your MVP, when you need to bring it into production, potentially there you get into the multiple different type of personas in play to make sure that you have it up and running in 24 hours by 7. So again, we are more than willing, more than happy, even to invest our time a little bit towards you in the context of such a type of workshop. So don't hesitate us to reach out to us. Thank you for joining. If you really say, okay, let's engage, we even can put a workshop format on concept on table. These are the 2 mail addresses. You just send it and we will respond back to you. Again, the audience, big thank you for listening to us. Yeah, big thank you for asking the questions. And Phil and Karthik, big thank you for bringing your thought leadership and your experience here on the table, on the floor. So I would say have a nice day further. Talk to you later. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.